class, we started with a new topic on state legislature altogether. We are realizing that when it comes to the Constitution of India, almost each class is a new topic because in every class we learn something new with respect to your Bare Act provisions. Constitution of India, as such, in itself, is such a dynamic subject that every time you will read it, you will find something new. This applies to me even with respect to studying the constitution, or rather teaching the constitution for a very long time now. So, and that applies to all of you as well. So starting the class with a brief summary of what we did in the last class. One basic trick to remember your provisions of the Bare Act, let it be of Constitution or let it be of any other Bare Act, is to draw connections within the Bare Act, right? So, for instance, when we come to the Indian Contract Act, we often see that the number 5 is very common in Indian Contract Act. So, often you will find that there are 5 clauses, 5 illustrations, public policy has 5 elements in it. A lot of sections can be divided into 5 parts, so on and so forth. So that is something which helps you retain a lot of information which is there in the Bare Act. When it comes to the Indian Evidence Act, it becomes important that you're connecting the dots with CPC and CRPC where relevant, and even with IPC where relevant. When it comes to the Indian Penal Code and the Criminal Procedure Code, it makes a lot of sense that you're reading these two subjects together, even though remembering the IPC is relatively easier in comparison to remembering other laws, primarily because it's a substantive law and it's very relatable from with our day-to-day lives as well. At least the important offenses that have been mentioned in the Indian Penal Code are quite relatable, and we are almost familiar with the kinds of punishments that are given for those provisions. Now, coming to the Constitution of India again, the topic that we are covering right now, which is legislatures, that is state legislature and union legislature, essentially your Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha, Legislative Assembly and Legislative Council, the best way to remember these provisions of the Constitution is to read them in tandem. And that is the reason that when we started with our last class, we decided that first and foremost, we are going to see what articles are to be read with, or rather which articles are to be read with which other articles, and the combination can be created for the same, so that we are not making doubling of effort in terms of remembering information, as we see that a lot of information that would apply to the union legislature would also similarly apply to the state legislatures. So in that context, I will start with this class also with a brief revision of which articles are to be read in tandem with which other articles of the Bare Act, so that anyone who is joining us in this class is also familiar with the same. Again, when it comes to the Constitution of India, rather any other subject for that matter, please always make sure that you have your Bare Acts, your hard copy Bare Acts with you. It is important to, as we say, that let's get our hands dirty, let's play with the mud. Similarly, when you are preparing for your judiciary exams, it becomes very important that you're playing with your Bare Acts. You're making not just your hands dirty, but your Bare Acts dirty also. So make sure that all of you have your hard copies of Bare Acts with you. And let's start the class with where we started our last class, as to understand which articles are to be read with which other articles. A series of these classes are going to be comprising of that. One topic that will comprise of a good chunk of case laws would be your anti-defection law. With respect to that also, we'll be coming to that topic shortly. But if you want to prepare something extra on it, your general awareness and reasoning course has socio-legal essays, and the latest video that has been added in it is with respect to anti-defection laws. So do take a look at that video just to give you a thorough idea of a topic which is as important for mains as it is for prelims, right? Okay. Now coming to starting with the Parliament. So we saw that Article 79, which provides for Constitution of Parliament, has to be read with Article 168, which provides us about the state legislatures. Article 80 has to be read with Article 171, which essentially tells us about the composition of Council of States. We have already seen that legislative councils as such is not mandatory in all states. While revising quickly, I'll be telling you again as to which are those states which have a legislative council. Article 81 tells us about the composition of House of People. It has to correspondingly be read with Article 170. Article 82 tells us about readjustment after each census, which is essentially about the delimitation commission. We see that so far as a counterpart of Article 82 is concerned, the same is covered in Article 170 only. Article 83 tells us about duration of houses of parliament. This is going to be our topic. This is from where we are going to start reading the Bare Act, or rather understanding the Bare Act today. But Article 83 as such has to be read with Article 172. Article 84 provides us for qualification for membership of parliament. It has to be read with 173. Article 85 tells us about sessions of parliament, prorogation and dissolution, has to be read with 174. Article 86, right of president to address and send messages to the House. The counterpart of a president in a state is a governor. So with respect to the governor, the article that is covered is Article 175. Article 88 tells us about the rights of ministers, attorney general, as respects House. Let me tell you, this is a very important article. A lot of times questions are asked upon this article because we see that the attorney general has a right to participate, has a right to speak, but does not have a right to vote. And this has been mentioned in this article. The counterpart of an attorney general is an advocate general. And we see that the counterpart of Article 88 is Article 177. So a game of doubles here. 88 tells us about attorney general and his rights. 177 tells us about advocate general, or rather not about attorney general. There's a separate article which talks about attorney general as such, but the rights of attorney general so far as the parliament is concerned is covered under 88, and the corresponding double provision of the same is Article 177. The next part of the parliament, which tells us about the various officers of the parliament. So speaker, deputy speaker, vice president, chairman, deputy chairman, all of these are officers of the parliament, and these have been covered in these specific provisions starting from Article 89. Now we see that so far as the chairman of the parliament is concerned, it is the vice president of India. The ex-officio chairman of, ex-officio chairman of Rajya Sabha is the vice president of India. But is there a counterpart of vice president when it comes to the states? The answer is no. So there is no corresponding provision with respect to the vice president when it comes to the legislative councils, but definitely there is a counterpart of a deputy chairman when it comes to the Council of States under Article 182. Then Article 90 tells us about vacation and resignation of and removal from the office of the deputy chairman. Counterpart is covered under 183. There is no counterpart to Article 91 of the Constitution, which tells us about the power of the deputy chairman or other persons to perform the duties of or to act as a chairman. Very logically, because when there is no chairman, that means when there is no vice president or a counterpart of a vice president, there cannot possibly be a provision to perform his duties as well, or a substitute of a provision to perform his duties as well. 92, which provides for the chairman or the deputy chairman not to preside while a resolution for his removal is in office. Counterpart is in 185. Then 93 tells us about the speaker and deputy speaker of the House of People. This is again a very important provision. Why? Because we commonsensically also, or from a general knowledge also, the general idea that we have about our country's polity, we do understand that the office of a speaker has to be a constitutional office. But is the office of a deputy speaker also a constitutional office? The answer to it is yes, and has been provided to you under Article 92. The corresponding provision of Article 92 is Article 178. Then Article 94 tells us about the vacation and resignation or removal from the offices of Speaker and Deputy Speaker. This also becomes an important provision from your prelims exam point of view, because often we are aware about the procedures of removal of judges and president and even vice president up to a certain extent. But when it comes to the speaker, a lot of us don't delve into so much detail, but it has been provided in our constitution under Article 94, and the corresponding provision that has to be read with the same is Article 179. Article 95 tells us about the power of deputy speaker and other persons to perform the duties of and to act as speaker. There is as such no counterpart for this article. It has been covered in the previous article only. Article 96 tells us about the speaker or the deputy speaker not to preside while his removal from office is under consideration. The counterpart of this article is Article 185. 97 tells us about salaries and allowances. 98 tells us about secretariat. 99 tells us about oath and affirmation. The only reason why we are not considering counterparts of these articles is only because they're not very relevant. So at times we need to choose, at times we need to leave certain articles so that again, we are not making an extra effort than is required. So the counterparts are as such not required. But yes, if you will delve deeper into the Constitution, you will find the same in the series of these articles itself. So far as Article 100 is concerned, again, a very important article, which tells you about the voting in houses or power of houses to act notwithstanding vacancies and quorum. Here we are going to discuss the various motions also that are passed with respect to a parliament. The counterpart of this article is Article 189. The next four provisions, 101, 102, 103, 104, particularly Article 104 is very relevant for your examination, both from, Article 102 is very relevant from your examination point of view, both for prelims as well as mains. The counterparts of these articles are Articles 190 and 191 so far as the state legislatures are concerned. These are the articles essentially which cover the anti-defection law, on which a mains question can also be asked for those of you in whose judiciary constitution is tested in mains also. Articles 105 and 106 talks about powers and privileges. For the previous batch, we've already covered this with Article 14. This is how when we are reading the Constitution or we are understanding the Constitution in a sequence, the ideal way to read these articles is with Article 14. So we'll be covering them again for this batch as well. But again, for the purposes of just a conceptual understanding, we'll be reading through these articles in these classes as well. But for sort of having a theoretical hold over these topics, we are going to understand them when we come to Article 14 of the Constitution of India again. Articles 107 to 111 provide us for the legislative procedure. Here, Article 109 has to be read with Article 198 and Article 111 has to be read with Article 200. Then we familiarize ourselves with procedures in financial matters from Articles 112 to 117. Here, Article 117 has to be read with Article 207. Then finally, general procedures have been provided to us under Articles 118 to Article 101 to 122. We need not know the parallel provisions of these when it comes to state legislatures, only because questions are never asked on these topics. But generally, we should be aware of each and every provision of the Constitution otherwise, right? Now, I have given you these numbers. After this class, try to draw connections with these numbers. Try to see how you can remember them. For instance, one of the ways I remember Part 18 of the Constitution of India is because it deals with emergency provisions. So E and E would always overlap. So if you're able to draw these connections, you will always remember various provisions of the BEAR Act, right? And Constitution is one of those BEAR Acts where one can, if one is able to draw these connections, it's very easy to understand the sequence, right? Okay. Now, coming to our last class, quickly summarizing the various aspects that we had covered in our last class, we had stopped at the Delimitation Commission. We started with Article 79, which provided for Constitution of Parliament. It told us that the Parliament comprises of President, Council of States, and House of People. That is the Lok Sabha, President, Lok Sabha, and Rajya Sabha. But then a question arose as to whether President is a part of the legislature. The President, as such, is not a part of the legislature. So the President is neither a part of the Lok Sabha nor a part of the Rajya Sabha, but he is the chief executive authority. So the parliament comprises of Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha, and the president, but the president is not a part of any of the legislatures. When it came to the state legislatures, that is Article 168, we saw that just like a parliament comprises of a president, council of states, and house of people, similarly, the state legislature comprises of governor, legislative assembly, and in a selected few states comprises of legislative council as well. The states where there is a legislative council is Andhra Pradesh, Bihar, Maharashtra, Karnataka, Uttar Pradesh, and Telangana. Jammu and Kashmir, as of now, it does have a legislative council, but moving forward, considering that the state has been bifurcated into union territories, a concrete decision needs to be seen on the same. In the past, a couple of states where debate has happened with respect to having legislative councils are Rajasthan and Tamil Nadu. Tamil Nadu is one of those states which had a legislative council and then passed a resolution towards dissolution of the same. Rajasthan is one of those states which has been looking forward to adopt a legislative council, but because we have seen in our last class that it is the parliament which has a major role to play as to whether a state should have a legislative council or not, we saw that no such similar resolution was passed in the parliament, because of which there was never a legislative council when it came to the state of Rajasthan. Article 169 tells us about the abolition or creation of legislative councils in state. Definitely, there is no counterpart of the same when it comes to the Rajya Sabha, because Rajya Sabha is a constitutional entity in its own right. It can neither be dissolved, which is what we'll study today, but at the same point of time, there is no provision for the creation or dissolution of Rajya Sabha. One is that Rajya Sabha is a permanent house. It never dissolves. It's only the members of the Rajya Sabha who are constantly retiring. But at the same point in time, just like legislative councils can be either abolished or created, the same provision is not there when it comes to the Rajya Sabha. It is the parliament which abolishes a legislative council. Parliament here, what one has to remember here is that the parliament is not bound by the resolution of a legislative assembly which has been passed by a special majority with respect to whether that state should have a legislative council or not. Article 80 provides for the composition of the Rajya Sabha or the Council of States. Here we see that the maximum strength of Rajya Sabha has to be of 250 members, that is 238 plus 12. These 12 members are nominated by the president, having special knowledge in the areas of literature, art, science, and social science. So one has to be very careful that a category of sports or philanthropy, for that matter, has not been covered here. Often this question is asked in your prelims exam. The maximum strength is 250. The current strength is 245. How the elections to Rajya Sabha take place? There is a simple formula at that. The total number of elected members in Legislative Assembly divided by the total number of vacancies plus 1 and a total of plus 1 as a round-up figure. If we cover the special powers with respect to the Rajya Sabha, we see that again it plays a very important role of a revisory house. That means that bills, more deliberative time goes to the bills if there is an upper house of the state. There are some areas where Rajya Sabha has a very significant role to play. So for instance, when it comes to Article 249 on whether a parliament can create a law on the state list, the Rajya Sabha has an important role to play there. When it comes to creation of an all India service, few years down the lane, you guys might just see that there's an all India judicial service. So which entity creates that all India judicial service? It is the Rajya Sabha. Again, so far as a deliberative house is concerned, Rajya Sabha has an important role to play. Even when it comes to constituent amendment bills under Article 368 of the Constitution, Rajya Sabha has an important role to play. All the three emergencies must be ratified by the Rajya Sabha. Therefore, Rajya Sabha as such, apart from being a revisory house, it is also an avenue for those who are otherwise very talented and experienced, but are not able to go via the elections route. In case of a coalition politics, Rajya Sabha does play an important role towards balancing the two houses. And as we see the current situation, so far as providing an effective opposition is also concerned, the Rajya Sabha has a major role to play. But when we understood the role of legislative councils, we realized that the role of legislative councils is extremely limited in comparison to that of Rajya Sabha. So whereas Rajya Sabha has all these functions to play as well, apart from being a revisory house, the legislative council at the state has a very limited role of only being a revisory house and only having some deliberative characteristics to it. So when we come to Article 171 of the Constitution, which provides us for the composition of legislative councils, we see that under no circumstance a legislative council should exceed 1/3 of the members of legislative assembly, provided the number of members, the minimum number of members in legislative council is 40. When we talk about 1/3 members of legislative council, they have to be coming from different areas. So the representation in a legislative council is relatively better earmarked and is relatively wider, can be understood to be relatively wider in terms of professions when it comes in comparison to the Rajya Sabha. So we see that 1/3 members of the legislative council have to be coming from municipalities, district boards, such other local authorities in the state as the parliament may specify. Half of, 1/12 to be elected from electorates residing in the states, that is graduates for at least 3 years. 1/12 to be elected from a pool of teachers not lower than the standard of secondary school. 1/3 have to be members of the legislative assembly, and the remainder have to be 1/3 have to be 1/3 have to be elected by the members of the legislative assembly, and the remainder have to be nominated by the governor from various areas of literature, science, art, social science, and cooperative society. So as we saw that Rajya Sabha, the president can nominate from 4 areas, that is literature, science, art, social science. But when it comes to the legislative council, the governor can nominate from literature, science, art, cooperative societies, and social service. Then we came. Why do we have such low class strength today? Do people have exams going on? Just a second. Then we came to the composition of House of People under Article 81 to be read simultaneously with Article 170. And this is where we essentially stopped in our last class. We understood that Article 81 has to be read with Article 331, which tells us about the representation of the Anglo-Indian community in the House of People or the Lok Sabha. 2 seats have to be reserved for the Anglo-Indian community by the president, but it should be in the opinion of the president that this community is underrepresented and should be nominated in the Lok Sabha. Correspondingly, just like 2 nominations can be made by the president in the Lok Sabha under Article 331, Article 333 provides for 1 seat reserved for the Anglo-Indian community as per the recommendation, or rather the discretion of the governor. So only if the Anglo-Indian community requires representation, the same would be provided for them. Though as a matter of convention, it is being seen that never this representation is actually looked into. Just these 2 seats are reserved for the Anglo-Indians. Then apart from that, the Lok Sabha comprises of total of 552 members. So far as the state legislatures are concerned, state legislatures can have a maximum of 500 members and a minimum of 60 members via direct election from territorial constituencies. Now, but so far as Lok Sabha is concerned, this 552 number is divided into 2 plus 530 plus 20. So 530 are members who are being directly elected from territorial constituencies. 20 members are elected from union territories. right? After that, we did cover the aspect of delimitation, where we realize that so far as balancing population is concerned, it becomes important that that timely delimitation is taking place, so that one vote, the rule of one vote, one representative is being covered. But we saw that so far as the last delimitation is concerned, the last delimitation took place in 2002, and it was seen that as of now, redistribution of population should not take place, because that will sort of create an imbalance with respect to one vote, one representative. And in that context, it was seen that via the Justice Kuldeep Singh Commission, the delimitation was frozen till 2026. There was an 84th Constitutional Amendment Act with respect to the same, and now a delimitation exercise will only take place by 2026, by which it is estimated that the states which have a larger chunk of population or a larger inclination of population will balance out the same with the states which adopted the population control measures much sooner. So now let's start with Article 83, which tells us about duration. Article 83 tells us about the duration of houses of parliament. So Article 83 tells us about when a Lok Sabha is dissolved and when a Rajya Sabha never gets dissolved. It says duration of houses of parliament. It starts with the Council of State. So it starts with the Rajya Sabha in clause 1. It says the Council of States shall not be subject to dissolution, but as nearly as possible, 1/3 of the members thereof shall retire as soon as may be on the expiration of every second year, in accordance with the provisions made on behalf by Parliament by law. So, very straightforward question that can be asked in your prelims. Council of States does not dissolve, but 1/3 of its members retire every second year. The kind of question that is asked to you is that they will often change the number second year to 1 year or 5 years or 3 years. So they can change the numbers like that, or they can change the ratio of the number of members who are retiring. So they would say 1/6 of the members, or 1/4 of the members, or 2/3 of the members. But the answer to it is 1/3 of the members. So the Council of States never dissolves, but 1/3 of the members retire every 2 years. Then, so far as the House of People is concerned, now this is something which is generally there in our open information, that the House of People have a duration of 5 years. After every 5 years, fresh elections take place. So the most relevant thing in clause 2 is House of People, 5 years. It says the House of People, unless sooner dissolved, shall continue for 5 years from the date appointed for its first meeting, and no longer, and the expiration of the said period of 5 years shall operate as the dissolution of House. So after 5 years, the House would automatically dissolve. It further says, and this period of 5 years was added post the 44th Constitutional Amendment Act. So before the 44th Constitutional Amendment Act, the duration of a Lok Sabha was actually 6 years. But after the 44th Amendment, we saw that the duration of Lok Sabha was restricted to 5 years. But then a proviso comes into picture. And this proviso is very important. So we see that so far as clause 1 is concerned, very limited information which needs to be remembered. So far as clause 2 is concerned, only Lok Sabha and 5 years need to be remembered. But then there is a proviso, which tells us what happens when there is a proclamation of an emergency. It says, provided that the said period may, while a proclamation of emergency is in operation, be extended by a parliament by law for a period not exceeding 1 year at a time, and not exceeding in case beyond a period of 6 months after the proclamation has ceased to operate. So when it is saying not exceeding 1 year at a time, so if a proclamation of emergency is in place and 1 year, and the Lok Sabha is in place for 1 year, The one that the proclamation of emergency will also cease to operate, and the Lok Sabha shall automatically dissolve. And once the proclamation of emergency has ceased to operate, then within 6 months, the Lok Sabha has to be automatically dissolved and fresh elections have to take place. But remember, friends, here that the period of 5 years of Lok Sabha, so when we are talking about this period of 1 year or this period of 6 months, it is in addition to a period of those 5 years, which is a general tenure so far as Lok Sabha is concerned. So, a proclamation of emergency does not lead to a direct dissolution of a house. It only comes into picture once the Lok Sabha has exceeded its tenure of 5 years. So, again, the Rajya Sabha does not retire. One third of the members retire at the expiration of every 2 years. This provision has been made, this provision is made by Parliament by law. So again, the retiring of members is functions as per a law. And so far as House of People are concerned, again, 5 years, this tenure of 5 years applies from the date of the first meeting. So it is not when general elections are concluded and a party comes into power. It is not when let's say, a discussion on a particular bill starts. It takes place from the date of the first meeting. So far as the expiration of 5 years is concerned, we have already seen that an automatic dissolution of the House will take place. However, with respect to duration of proclamation of emergency, it will be extended by a maximum of 1 year. And after a proclamation of emergency has ceased to take effect, then fresh elections have to be conducted within a period of 6 months. Now, the corresponding provision of Article 83 is 172. So let's see what 172 states. And these are two articles. So what Article 83 states, Article 172 is an exact reiteration of the same. So we'll be reading it in this class, but mind you that you can just write it here itself in your Bharat that it's the same provision. So then you don't have to read Article 172 again. The information is very similar. So let's see what Article 172 says. It talks about the duration of state legislature. It says every legislative assembly of every state, unless sooner dissolved, shall continue for 5 years from the date appointed for its first meeting, and no longer and the expiration of the said period of 5 years shall operate as a dissolution of assembly. So again, it talks about the Legislative Assembly, which is a counterpart of the Lok Sabha, and it essentially tells you that an automatic dissolution will take place after 5 years. It further says, provided that the said period may, while a proclamation of emergency is in operation, be extended by Parliament by law for a period not exceeding 1 year at a time, and not extending in a case beyond a period of 6 months after the proclamation has ceased to operate. So exactly the same words, but there's a bit of reversal here. So whereas Article 83 starts with the Rajya Sabha, here we see that Legislative Council is covered in the last clause. So it says that the Legislative Council of a state shall not be subject to dissolution, but as nearly as possible, 1/3 of the members thereof shall retire as soon as may be on the expiration of every second year in accordance with the provisions made in that behalf by Parliament by law. So exactly the same words, only a slight reversal so far as the sequence is concerned. Now, Article 84 tells us about qualifications for membership to the Parliament. So again, it will tell you about the qualification required with respect to Council of States as well as the House of People. This article has not only to be read with Article 173, but also with Article 102, which tells you about the disqualification. So when we are reading about qualification, simultaneously, we have to read about disqualification as well. Though we'll be taking up disqualification in greater detail when we come to the anti-defection law. So today we'll just do a quick reading of the same, and we'll get into the details of the law in the class which is allocated for anti-defection, which should hopefully be your next or the next to next class, right? So Article 84 tells you about qualification of membership of parliament. It says a person shall not be qualified to be chosen to fill a seat in parliament unless he A is a citizen of India and makes and subscribes before some person authorized in that behalf by the election commission an oath or affirmation according to the form set out for the purpose in the third schedule. We are already familiar, if we have been attending the constitution classes in continuity, we are already familiar that oath and affirmation is provided. The various oaths and affirmations have been provided in the third schedule. Clause B tells us is in the case of a seat in the Council of States not less than 30 years of age, and in case of a seat in the House of People not less than 25 years of age. Often we get confused in numbers. So to remember this number of 30 and 25, and often where there are numbers, a prelims question automatically comes. So where there are these numbers, a simple way to remember is that House of Elders is the Rajya Sabha. If it is elders, then definitely the age limit would be more in comparison to that of Lok Sabha. The age limit is 30 years and in Lok Sabha it is 25 years. So far as the office of president is concerned, it has to be 35 years. So remember, president 35, Rajya Sabha 30, and Lok Sabha 25. So the eldest person has to be the president of India. But the House of Elders have to be of 30 years minimum. And then the lowest in ranking in terms of age groups of people is 25 years with respect to House of People. And you can always remember it with all your movies which are talking about the youth elections deal with very young people at the age of 25, 26 getting becoming representatives in the parliament. So that essentially is talking about the Lok Sabha or the legislative assemblies. Then it says, point C says, clause C says, possesses such other qualifications as may be prescribed in that behalf by or under any law made by the parliament. The law made by the parliament in this case is the Representation of People's Act, right? This Article 173, which is the corresponding of this article, reiterates the exact provision. So let's just quickly go through Article 173 so that we don't have to read it again after this class. It says, qualification for membership of state legislature. A person shall not be qualified to be chosen to fill a seat in the legislature of a state unless he, A, is a citizen of India and makes and subscribes before some person authorized in that behalf by the election commission on oath or affirmation according to the form set out for the purposes in the third schedule. Clause B is in the case of a seat in legislative assembly not less than 25 years of age, and in case of a seat for the legislative council not less than 30 years of age. And C possesses such other qualifications as may be prescribed in that behalf by or under any law made by the parliament. So exact reiteration of the words with absolutely no change. But then when we are reading qualifications, which we have understood has to be citizen of India, administered oath under the third schedule, age, Rajya Sabha 30 years, Lok Sabha 25 years, and other qualifications, that is with respect to the qualifications that have been given in your Representation of People's Act, which essentially tells you that the person should not have a criminal background, the person should not be an undischarged insolvent, so on and so forth. But where we are reading the qualifications, it becomes important that we are reading disqualifications also simultaneously. So Article 102 talks about disqualification. Remember, it is not talking about ineligibility. Eligibility has already been provided to you under Article 84. But it is talking about a person who has become a member of the Lok Sabha or the Rajya Sabha, but now needs to be disqualified. So let's take a look at Article 102. The corresponding provisions and Article 102 and Article 103 for that matter The corresponding provisions of these are 190 and 191, though we'll be covering those in the lecture of anti-defection law. So just quickly, let's go through the disqualifications just to create a continuity with respect to the same. So it says disqualification for membership. Clause 1 here reads, a person shall be disqualified for being chosen as and being a member of either house of the parliament. A, if he holds any office of profit under the government of India or the government of any state other than an office declared by the parliament by law not to disqualify its holder. Would anyone want to tell me what is an office of profit? What is an office of profit? Anyone?
When he is getting the salary from the government.
Okay. Only from the government or even a private entity?
When PSUs.
Okay. Anyone else?
And ma'am, it also includes the private office of profit.
Yes. So let's say a person is a member of the parliament but is also deriving a parallel salary from any other source. In that case, such a person would be disqualified on holding an office of profit. So basically, a person who's a member of parliament cannot derive an alternate salary apart from what he or she is receiving as a member of the parliament. Second is if he is of unsound mind and stands so declared by a competent court. So it is not just declaration of unsound mind. It has to be by a competent court. Then third is he is an undischarged insolvent. He's a bankrupt, right? Fourth is he is not a citizen of India or has voluntarily acquired the citizenship of a foreign state or is under any acknowledgement or of allegiance or adherence from a foreign state. So remember here, a tricky question in prelims can just replace foreign state with an alien state, an enemy alien state, right? But the answer to the question would only be with respect to foreign state. So a person who is not a citizen of India or chooses to renounce his citizenship and acquire the citizenship of another country will automatically be disqualified. And E, if he is so disqualified by or under any law made by the parliament. A quick tip here. Anytime, I've given you two tips with respect to your prelims examinations in this session. One is wherever you find numbers, mark them because your questions would be centered around your numbers. And these are very easy questions. These are very direct questions from which you can get some quick points. And the second is wherever there are multiple clauses, a lot of times your answer would be all of the above, provided you go through the options clearly. So here, when you take a look at this provision, you see that while reading these provisions only, a very basic multiple choice question can be derived from the same. What are the parameters on which a member of a parliament can be disqualified? Holding an office of profit, being a person of an unsound mind and being declared so by a competent court, being an undischarged insolvent, renouncing his citizenship or acquiring the citizenship of a foreign state, and any acknowledgement of allegiance or adherence to a foreign state as well. So if a person has not renounced citizenship but has acknowledged his allegiance or adherence to a foreign state, still he would be disqualified from being a member of the parliament. Explanation says, for the purposes of this clause, a person shall not be deemed to hold an office of profit under the government of India or the government of any state by the reason only that he is a minister either of the union or of such state. So holding the position as a minister does not constitute, or rather is an exception to the principle of office of profit. And finally, clause 2, which we are going to delve into greater detail in a session on anti-defection law, which is about a person shall be disqualified for being a member of either house of the parliament if he is so disqualified under the 10th schedule. Yes, Arthur?
Ma'am, on which basis is the retirement made, which is in after expiration of every second year?
That is provided by parliament by law. सो पार्लियामेंट ने इस रिस्पेक्ट में राज्यसभा के जो मेंबर्स हैं वो किस बेसिस पे रिटायर होंगे उसके ऊपर एक लॉ बनाई है. देयर इज एन एज लिमिट विद रिस्पेक्ट टू मेंबर्स of the parliament, and usually after a fixed tenure वो retire होते हैं. So if I'm not wrong, I'll have to check upon this part because it's been a while I've read upon this. But एक राज्यसभा member का tenure around 6 years का रहता है, तो वो हर 6 years बाद वो retire होते हैं. But I'll have to check on this because I read this a long while back. So I'll get back to you on this. But usually यही होता है कि एक member का tenure 6 साल तक का रहता है राज्यसभा में, right?
Okay, ma'am.
Okay. Article 103 is a very important article from your examination point of view. It tells you about decision on questions as to disqualification of members. And this is one of the discretionary powers of the president. It says, if any question arises as to whether a member of either house of parliament has become subject to any disqualification mentioned in clause 1 of Article 102, the question shall be referred for the decision of the president and his decision shall be final. ये आपके एग्जाम्स में कैसे आता है? इसी क्वेश्चन को पूछा जाएगा, डिसीजन ऑन क्वेश्चंस एज टू डिस्क्वालिफिकेशन ऑफ मेंबर्स, हु हैज द फाइनल डिसीजन. आपके ऑप्शंस में रहेगा स्पीकर, जिससे आप बहुत ज्यादा कंफ्यूज होंगे. सेकेंड रहेगा मेजॉरिटी ऑफ द मेंबर्स ऑफ द पार्लियामेंट, अगेन कंफ्यूजन की पॉसिबिलिटी है बट अ लिटिल लेसर. Third would be the discretionary power of the president, and fourth would be president in consultation with the council of ministers. So the answer to this question, please mark it in your bare act, it's a very important provision, is discretionary power of the president. Right? Anti-defection law we'll be covering in our subsequent session. Let's come to Article 85 back now, which tells us about the sessions of the parliament. Just give me a minute. Article 85 says sessions of parliament, prorogation and dissolution. It says the president shall from time to time summon each house of parliament to meet at such time and at such place as he thinks fit. So who summons the house? The president. Who summons the parliament? The president does. Again, you can get confused in this and you can say that the speaker summons the parliament. No, I'm sorry. No, the president or the prime minister summons the parliament. No, the president summons the parliament or each house of the parliament to meet at such time and place as he thinks fit. But 6 months shall not intervene between the last sitting in one session and the date appointed for the first sitting in the next session. So again, who summons the house? The president does. आगे हम देखेंगे who prorogues the house and who dissolves the house? The president does. So the next clause only tells us the president may from time to time prorogue the house or either house, prorogue the houses or either houses, but B, dissolves the house of people. Look at the careful craftsmanship that has been used in drafting of this constitution. जहां पर उन्होंने dissolve word use किया, they were very careful that it is with respect to the house of people only. But summoning is with respect to both the houses. Prorogation is with respect to both the houses. Who does it? The President of India. Does Speaker have any role to play in it? No. Does Vice President have any role to play in it as being the chairman of the Rajya Sabha? No, right? So the important things that you have to remember, 6 months, president, summon, prorogue, dissolution. But then a question arises. Now we can, by guesswork only, we can tell what summoning of a house would mean. And by guesswork, we can tell what dissolution of the house would mean. What do you mean by prorogation?
When the house is summoned for 3 months and it is decided that the house will look on the matters for 3 months, then it can be prorogued for 4 months.
Okay. What is the difference between adjournment and prorogation? House is adjourned.
Is adjourned, then the sitting is adjourned and it will held on some other day. But when the session is prorogued, then it means the duration is enlarged.
Does the president adjourn the house?
The speaker adjourns the house, ma'am.
President adjourns the house.
Speaker adjourns the house.
Good. So again, the basic mantra of cracking your prelims exam: stick to the bare act. This provision nowhere tells you that the president adjourns the house. So definitely on a question of whether the president adjourns the house, the answer is a negative. Whether the speaker adjourns the house or not, we'll be coming to it shortly when we come to the office of the speaker. But again, the term adjournment relates to a brief interval in an ongoing session. So again, there was a pandemonium in the house. कई बार हम newspaper में ये headlines पढ़ते हैं, because of a pandemonium in the house was adjourned. The power of adjourning a house lies with the presiding officer. So with respect to the Lok Sabha, it applies to the speaker, it resides with the speaker. With respect to the Rajya Sabha, it resides with the vice president. An adjournment does not affect the existing business or the pending business of the house. There are two types of adjournments. One is a date fixed adjournment, that on a certain date the parliament will not sit in session or the house has been adjourned. Second is adjournment sine die. Sine die essentially means when a date has not been fixed as to when the house will sit again. But what do you mean by prorogation? Prorogation means termination of an ongoing session. So see, it does not mean dissolution of an ongoing session. It just says terminate the ongoing session. Budget session है या फिर winter session है, तो winter session में कुछ था ही नहीं discuss करने को. There was no debate that could have taken place. So the house was terminated, right? The house was prorogued, or rather the session, house is not the right word here. The session was prorogued by the president. Now, power of prorogation lies only with the president. This power is not a discretionary power. We will see that Article 85 tells us about the non-discretionary power of the president, whereas Article 86 tells us about the discretionary power of the president. So Article 85 has to be exercised. That means a house can be prorogated, or the president can prorogue the house only on the advice of the Council of Ministers. On prorogation, the bills pending before the parliament are not affected. This is different than the concept of Britain. Britain में अगर termination होता है या prorogation होती है, so the house automatically, the bills, the pending affairs of the parliament automatically come to a standstill. Now, dissolution is the dissolution of the house. So that means that complete termination of the Lok Sabha. That essentially means that now the Lok Sabha will only sit again when a future election takes place. Again, Article 85 Clause 2, the president has to exercise this power of dissolution of the Lok Sabha on the advice of the Council of Ministers. Dissolution of Lok Sabha leads to lapsing of bills. So if a bill is pending in Lok Sabha, on this topic also a lot of times questions are asked to you. So if a bill is pending in Lok Sabha and it has to go to Rajya Sabha, then the bill, when it is there in Lok Sabha and the Lok Sabha has been dissolved, the bill would not move further. So if the bill will have to be reintroduced in the Lok Sabha. So anything which is there in Lok Sabha will just end at that, right? तो वो bill जो है उसका कोई cause and effect नहीं रहेगा. One will have to reintroduce the bill again. And second is, of course, if the bill has been remaining in Lok Sabha only, then of course it lapses. However, if the bill is pending if the bill is pending in Rajya Sabha only, it has not gone to the Lok Sabha from Rajya Sabha as yet, then the bill will not meet its end, or the bill will not lapse. However, if the bill is in Rajya Sabha and it is going to Lok Sabha, and then again Lok Sabha dissolves, then the bill lapses. So please mark these three if you're taking notes, or if you intend to write this information in your Bare Act itself. Bill which is there in Lok Sabha has to go to Rajya Sabha will lapse. Bill which is there in Lok Sabha only will lapse. Bill which is in Rajya Sabha going to Lok Sabha will lapse. If it is there in Rajya Sabha only for dissolution, because Rajya Sabha does not dissolve, the bill will have its effect. And when it comes to when the Lok Sabha is reconstituted, the bill will go to Lok Sabha for reconsideration. So again, when the bill does not lapse, if it is there in Rajya Sabha only, if it has gone to the president, it will not lapse. That means it has gone through the third cycle, the 3 cycles. And of course, if it is if from Lok Sabha it has gone to Rajya Sabha and finally it has gone to president for his approval, but a date has been notified by the president for a joint sitting, then again the bill will not lapse. Are we clear? Any questions still here? These are relatively very important so far as your exams are concerned. Okay. Now again, if we understand the sessions of the parliament, we see that there are essentially 3 sessions of the parliament: the budget session, the monsoon session, and the winter session. As Article 85 tells us, there has to be a gap of, there has to be, after every 6 months, a session definitely has to be held, and the same is the responsibility of the president. Again, the purpose of these sessions are to transact upon, apart from the budget session, the monsoon session, and the winter session, there can also be special sessions of the parliament, which is with respect to transaction upon a particular business. Out of all these 3 sessions, the longest is the budget session and is considered to be the most important session. It takes place from February to May. The monsoon sessions takes place from August to September. And finally, the winter session, which is the shortest, takes place from November to December. Special sessions can be within a regular session or even outside the regular session. So one of special sessions was conducted to commemorate the 50th year of independence. There have been special sessions that have been held otherwise as well. A special session of a parliament is different from a special sitting of the Lok Sabha. Right? Okay. Then last article for the day tells us about the discretionary power of the president. So in the previous article, that is Article 85, we saw that the president has to act on the advice of the Council of Ministers. So anything which happens with respect to the sessions of the parliament has to be as per the discretion of the Council of Ministers. But Article 86 tells us about the discretionary powers of the president. It says, right of president to address and send messages to the House. The president may address either House of Parliament or both houses assembled together, and for that purpose require the attendance of members. Clause 2 states, the president may send messages to either House of the Parliament, whether with respect to a bill pending, then pending in pending in Parliament, or otherwise, and a house to which any message is so sent shall with all convenient dispatch consider any matter required by the message to be taken into consideration. So in one batch, we have already covered the discretionary powers of the president, and we did understand that the president has a recommendatory role when it comes to advising the parliament. The same has been reiterated in this article, and it is completely the discretion of the president to exercise this article. This article is correspondingly read with Article 175, which is an exact reiteration of Article 86. And similarly, Article 174 has to be read with Article 85. So let's quickly read these 2 articles. You guys don't have your CRPC classes today because the educator is unwell. So I'll just take a bit of your time. I'll just take 5 minutes extra so that we finish these articles, right? Okay. So Article 174 tells us about sessions of the state legislature, prorogation and dissolution. It reads, the governor shall from time to time summon the house or each house of the legislature of the state to meet at such time and place as he thinks fit. But 6 months shall not intervene between its last sitting in one session and the date appointed for its first sitting in the next session. The governor may from time to time prorogue the house or either house, B, dissolve the legislative assembly. So an exact reiteration of Article 85. Article 175, just like Article 86 tells you about the right of the president to send messages. Similarly, Article 175 tells you about the right of the governor to address and send messages to the house or houses. It says the governor may address the legislative assembly, or in the case of a state having a legislative council, either house of the legislature of a state or both houses assembled together, and may for that purpose require the attendance of members. And clause 2, the governor may send messages to the house or houses of the legislature of a state, whether with respect to a bill then pending in the legislature or otherwise, and a house to which any message is so sent shall with all convenient dispatch consider any matter required by the message to be taken into consideration. So these were the articles with respect to sessions of the parliament and the state legislature. I am deliberately leaving Article 87. I'm deliberately leaving the class on Article 87 so that we start in continuity the next session. We'll be coming to the officers of the parliament. So we'll be dealing in detail with respect to the office of speaker and deputy speaker, and of course the vice president in our next class. And then the subsequent class would be on the anti-defection law. By then, if you guys have time, do watch the lesson on social legal issues. Those who are new students, please be scheduling your counseling calls so that you are clearer with respect to how you're going to go about the course, right? Any doubts from today's session? Okay, so we'll conclude today's class for today. Thank you, everyone.